The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back. New York Mets in the zone. The two hosts are here. Robert Cole. How are you, Robert?
Doing good, thank you.
Good. Marty Rose is here. Mert?
I am here. All good, Ralph. Thank you.
And you sound good, both of you. And we're talking off the air. We're going to make this a tribute to the people who died in the past year. Start out with two former Mets. Seaver died the year before, Mert tells me. But two or three of my memories when I was a Met fan, we were all Met fans in the early days. Willard Marshall passed away this year. Norm Sherry passed away this year. And Duke Carmel, who was, given the nature of his nickname, a kind of a guy that we rooted for. He came over from St. Louis, and they presented him as more than he turned out to be. But rest in peace, those guys. We have a bevy of ball players, not just baseball players, football players, basketball players who have died. We're going to try to pay tribute to those. And who comes to mind, Marty, that you want to talk about that passed away in the last year or so? Start with you.
Well, during last year, like we were saying before, there was some very big names. Starting with Hank Aaron, of course. What can you say? One of the greatest of all time, and one of the greatest hitters of all time, and most likely the home run champion of all time. Except for, one thing. And besides Hank Aaron, as far as big names, you had Don Sutton, who I believe was in the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, and
yes.
You had other guys I personally remember that were really good. Mike Marshall, a relief pitcher. Who I don't know if he had like 70 saves one year, some ridiculous amount of saves. I remember that.
Well, not saves, but appearances.
Okay.
He had like over 90 appearances in 1 year.
Right.
Rubber arm.
Some kind of health nut. Do you remember that? He was he had some kind of thing that he was doing to make sure he could pitch in all those games. Some kind of muscular thing. I don't really remember exactly what it was.
He had a doctorate in physiology.
Okay, there you go.
And he broke down and wrote a book on exactly how balls should be thrown. And he trained young pitchers for many, many years here in Florida at a camp that he had.
Okay. Yeah.
Very interesting. How about this one who passed away? Solly Drake.
Wow.
Does that name sound familiar?
Yes, brother of Sammy Drake of the Mets.
Exactly. They both played in the big leagues around the same time. I think Solly Drake was with the Cubs and Sammy Drake with the Mets. You have Encyclopedia memory, my friend. I'm talking. I guess I'm talking to both of you. How about that?
Yes.
Pull that name out, Ralph. I don't know how you pull that name out. The guy played 1956 with the Cubs, and 1959 with the Dodgers and the Phillies. I mean, that's it.
Yeah. But again, his claim to fame was his brother, or was his brother's claim to fame him. And is there any fame at all just for people who have nothing else in their mind but trivial bullshit like me?
That's the three of us. The three of us.
Well, I have to admit, all the things what could be going on in my mind, given the way the world has turned out, I'm glad it's occupied by, except the necrology part, but I'm glad old trivia goes through my mind. It keeps me from thinking about what's going on today. And it's another thing. It's crazy. I want to ask you, who's your favorite all-time Ukrainian second baseman? No, nobody can't name it. Can't name them. There are so many that they come to mind, and I don't know where that came from. I guess it came from the Drakes. They both played a little second base. I don't think they were Ukrainian at all.
No, I don't think so.
No. Okay. I want to talk about somebody who died within the past few months that isn't a baseball player, but an athlete, and one that was one of my real heroes, and that was Sam Jones of the Boston Celtics. That team was made up of so many stars. They were so deep and so great. And I got to know Sam Jones through a book that was written by Feinstein about Red Auerbach. And Sam Jones, his story and interviews with him were in that book. And I recommend it. I don't know what it's called, but if you Google Red Auerbach, the author John Feinstein, and Sam Jones, you'll get it. What a great team the Celtics were of those years, and he was particularly great. This guy could shoot like he was among the guys who were second team All-Pro. I mean, Oscar and Jerry West were the quintessential backcourt, but after them, the NBA had guys like Sam Jones, Hal Greer, the greats that
J.C. Jones too. You know that team. John Havlicek couldn't even get into starting lineup with that team. He was a
sixth man.
Unbelievable.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, Tommy Heinsohn and both Jones guys. You know.
Well, don't forget the Jones boys were the backup to Cousy and Sharman.
Oh, that's going back even further, right? That's right.
Yeah, that's when I first started following them. And the NBA. I remember when the future announcer, Bud Palmer, was a forward with the Knicks.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
And I remember Saturdays they were on. I remember the hardwood floor from when they played in Boston. the checkered hardboard floor. Those were some great days of NBA basketball. Mert, you and I, story we must have told 15 times about early NBA. We were probably 12, 13 years old, and given permission to go out and see the Knicks, and it turns out it was a triple overtime game between the Knicks and the Warriors. Wilt's first year. So that puts us at about 13. I guess it was 1959. And we watched. All we kept thinking, my God, no cell phones, no. How do we call home or whatever? One overtime, two overtime.
Be a little late.
Right.
Yeah.
We were a little late. We were a little late, all right. And I think it was Willie Knowles got the rebound.
He did. That's right.
Oh. And we were sitting at that end of the garden too, right under us.
Remember they used to have double headers? They used to have NBA double headers with four different teams going right back. Remember that? For one a day. Yeah.
And sometimes the Harlem Globetrotters would be the first game. And there were times when they'd play basketball in the afternoon and lay down the ice to play hockey at night. And I have no memory of you and I doing that, but the Bear and I wouldn't leave after the Knick game, and we'd hide in the bathrooms and what have you, and sneak down and watch them put the ice on, that which was a production in itself. They'd cover up the basketball floor, and memories of those days run rampant. Anything come to your mind about any of the players who we've recently lost? Robert Cole.
Well, while you guys were talking, I went back over the list again, and there were several Mets that passed away last year. Pedro Feliciano, Lou Carmel, Willard Hunter, Norm Sherry, Win Hawkins, Dick Tidrow, and Randy Tate all played briefly for the Mets.
Jeff Innes just like last week, I think.
Right, a couple of weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you about Dick Tidrow a little bit. Dick Tidrow became a super scout, very responsible for building the pitching staffs of those giant teams through the years. And he passed away, and I was talking to Michael Doza, who's the official scorer for the Giants and the A's, and talking about his long-term association with Tidrow, and how if this organization will be crippled by his loss. And it reminds me of just how important good scouting and good player development are. And speaking of player development, Norm Sherry worked for the Giants as their short A manager, where all the draft picks assembled for their first year in baseball, with the exception of some who start out in A ball or whatever. most of them start out in short A, and the importance that baseball gives to the managers and the coaches they don't necessarily appreciate them with money, but with respect, because a player breaking in will get impressions from what life is like as a major leaguer or, as a professional player from the guy who's breaking him in. So the best coaches in any organization all start out and spend 2 or 3 years. Bochy was one of those in the minors who I met at Short A, working for San Diego. He had Tim Flannery as a coach in Short A baseball, and those guys were the essence of that streak of great teams with the Giants. So got to give Norm Sherry and those guys a lot of credit, and he was also the one who made a pitcher out of Sandy Koufax, who had just been a thrower. Why don't, Robert, you're a Dodger fan. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, well, Koufax was signed as a bonus baby in '55. And in those days, the rules said that if you signed for more than $10,000, you had to spend 2 years on the team's roster. So you couldn't go to the minor leagues. And Koufax was with the Dodgers for 2 years. Spring training, I believe it was after the '57 season, just before the '58 season, Norm Sherry was talking to him and said, as fast as you throw, if you take a few miles an hour off the ball, you're still going to throw past batters and you're going to have more control. And basically, starting in '58, he became a pitcher.
Well, very well said. He was a good guy, too. Brooklyn guy, one of those guys that the Mets drew upon early on, former Dodgers. They had a bunch of those, starting with Charlie Neal, and then Snyder came along. Who were some of the other early Mets, early Dodgers? Early Mets who were Dodgers.
Gil Hodges.
Right.
Right.
Clem Labine, if I'm not mistaken.
Very briefly, yes.
Yeah. Pignatano.
Very briefly also.
Yeah, right at the beginning.
Coach for a long time, though, right?
Yes. Yeah, he was the bullpen coach.
Right.
Of course, Casey Stengel could never remember Pignatano's name, and also always called him Cannizzaro.
And Cannizzaro he called Casanero.
Yes.
Wouldn't it been great to have had Casey on this podcast? But a media where he could have said anything and not be censored by, radio or this, that, and the other thing. He would have loved the opportunity, I'll bet. He would have talked about that for the rest of his life. He would have said, I had Mantle, I had DiMaggio, but I had Cole and I had Rose. And those are the two. Those are my two.
Yeah, and then he would say, and you could look it up.
Right. And with that in mind, I'm going to start to mention this more often in any of my podcasts, if you go to Comfortably Zoned on YouTube, every one of our shows and offerings are archived. So, and it's, believe it or not, 3,000 plus offerings are on YouTube. Yeah, that's a lot of babble. That's a lot of kibitz, and that's a lot of rambling. and it's we talk about this off the air, Marty and I. It's fun. And to paraphrase an OJ attorney, if it ain't fun, it shouldn't be getting done. But
I thought that was if the glove, if it don't fit, you gotta quit.
Right, the same guy. I can't even think of his. Thank God his name isn't Johnny Cochran. But thank God I have more trouble thinking of him than I do Norm Sherry and Willard Hunter. Well, we were talking off the air a little bit about Willard Hunter. Got to mention, he wasn't very good, but he had good company in that first year with the Mets. There was Herb Mulford, Bauda, never could pronounce his name. Yes. Moorhead, Mulford, and the rest made for what I didn't really like. I didn't like all that losing. It was cute for a while, especially the second year. It drove me nuts.
Dave Hillman, Larry Foss, Vinegar Bend Mizell, Ray Davialt.
Yeah, and let me tell you something. I can tell you the last cut for the Mets that year.
Yeah.
A guy named Butterball Botts. Last cut in spring training, or among the last cuts, Ted Lepsio was cut early on, but Butterball Botts went on to be an Angel relief pitcher, for whatever that's worth. And that just goes to show you I have too much crap going on in my head. All right. Anything you guys want to close on? We got a little break from the somberness by seeing the humor in everything. But there's not a guy on those list of 104 people that played in the major leagues died just last year. And very few don't evoke memories. So, rest in peace.
One of the ones that is rather anonymous but yet very important was Dr. Bobby Brown. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
long time Yankee and also the American League president for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
And he, along with Art Ditmar, who passed, and Mudcat Grant, who passed, all did interviews for my book, Comfortably Zoned in Nevada Pine Tar, available by me and George Grimm. I've got to give George Grimm a tremendous amount of credit. Peter Golenbach called it brilliantly written. He wrote the foreword. Mark Littell wrote another foreword. It's 500 pages of good bathroom reading. And I was complimented by that review that somebody gave me, because what better place to enjoy a book that has, again, 500 stories, all of which you'll enjoy if you're out there reading books. I didn't realize that Bobby Brown died this year. I knew he had passed, but I thought it was before or last year. In any event, thanks for calling that out to me. Robert Cole, Marty Rose, we enjoyed both of you as an audience, and as a co-host of yours, I'm honored to have you. The show is the Mets in the Zone, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tyko. Again, Marty Rose and Robert Cole make the show sing. Catch you next time, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.